In the quiet countryside of New South Wales, Australia, a young woman named Anita Lorraine Cobby Lynch met a tragic and horrifying fate. Her story is one of innocence brutally stolen, a nation gripped by shock, and a relentless pursuit of justice. Anita's disappearance sent shockwaves through the community, as law enforcement, family, and concerned citizens launched an intensive search effort to find her. The haunting details that would emerge in the wake of her disappearance would forever scar the collective memory. Anita was a vivacious and compassionate soul, known for her kindness and infectious smile. Her abduction left her loved ones shattered, grappling with the horrific reality that their beloved Anita was gone. As the investigation into Anita's abduction unfolded, the nation followed with bated breath. The brutality of the crime and the shocking details that emerged painted a chilling picture of the darkness that can exist even in the most serene places. This is the story of Anita Lorraine Cobby Lynch, a young woman whose life was brutally cut short. Anita Lorraine Cobby Lynch was born in Sydney on the 2nd of November 1959, to her father Gary Bernard Lynch, who worked as a graphic artist with the Royal Australian Air Force, and her mother Grace Peggy Lynch, who worked as a nurse. As a teenager, Anita participated in beauty pageants, including winning the Miss Western Suburbs pageant in November 1979, and had a promising career as a model. However, she decided instead to follow in her mother's footsteps into nursing. Anita met her future husband, John Cobby, while studying for her nursing degree at Sydney Hospital. They got married on the 27th of March 1982. During the time of her murder in 1986, the couple had separated and Anita was living with her parents in Blacktown, New South Wales. The couple was in the process of reconciling and were on good terms before she was murdered, according to John. Anita worked in Sydney and commuted daily from her home in Blacktown till the night of February 2, 1986, when she never returned home and things took a turn for the worse for Anita. On February 2, 1986, Anita finished work at Sydney Hospital and met friends for dinner in nearby Redfern. Afterward, she boarded a train just a few minutes after 9 p.m. so she could head to her parents' home in Blacktown from Central Railway Station. When she arrived at the Blacktown station just before 10 p.m., Anita would usually ring her father, who would pick her up, but on that day she decided to walk home alone from the station after finding out that the public phone booth at the station had been broken and no taxis were available at the taxi rank. As she was heading home, on her way a gang of 5 men drove up beside her, slowed down, and halted their stolen white HT Holden Kingswood. 2 men jumped out of the car and pulled Anita as she kicked and screamed inside, where there were 3 other men. A teenage boy, his younger sister, and his mother heard someone screaming from the street in front of their house and went outside in time to see Anita forced into the attacker's car. These men were John Travers, 18, who was considered the ringleader of the gang, Michael Murdoch, 19, Michael Murphy, 33, Gary Murphy, 28, and Les Murphy, 22. The boy ran across the road to help, but the car drove off before he reached it. Returning home, he telephoned the police to report what he had seen. A few minutes later, their neighbor and his girlfriend arrived home and, after being told of the abduction, they drove off to search for the car. They eventually drove down Reen Road, now known as Peter Brock Drive, Prospect, and stopped by the now empty Holden, where the man used a spotlight to search the adjacent paddock. Seeing nothing in the paddock and believing the car he was looking for was a different model Holden, he returned home. The attackers later stated that they had hidden in the long grass to avoid the spotlight and waited for the man to leave. While in the car, Anita was ordered to remove all of her clothes, but she refused to comply, as she begged the men to let her go. Anita explained that she was married and that she was also menstruating, but the men did not care and severely beat her by punching her repeatedly, breaking her nose and both cheekbones for disobeying them. After they beat her, they forcefully stripped her of her clothes and made her perform fellatio on all 5 of them. The perpetrators then drove to a service station to purchase fuel using money stolen from Anita's purse. Anita was then driven down Serene Road to the secluded paddock, while being held down in the car, sexually assaulted repeatedly, and continually beaten by the 5 perpetrators. When they got into the paddock, Anita was so badly beaten that she was unable to move, so then the men dragged her along a barbed wire fence, and then dumped her there, and continued to sexually assault and beat her. One of the perpetrators, John Travers, then became concerned that if Anita somehow survived this ordeal, she would be able to identify her attackers, since could identify them because she had seen their faces, heard their names, and knew the car they were driving. He then tried to convince the other perpetrators to murder her, who later agreed, but they wanted no part in it and told John Travers to do what he had to do. John then walked towards Anita's mangled-up body, put a knife to her neck, and slit her throat so deeply that her head was nearly decapitated. When Anita did not return home, her family initially thought she was staying overnight with a friend, but after learning that she failed to appear at her workplace the next day, they reported her missing on the 3rd of February. On the morning of the 4th of February, her naked body was found in the paddock by a farmer investigating noises coming from his cows and what they were milling around. The farmer was horrified and called the police, and they took her body in so her family could identify her. The farmer told the detectives that he had actually heard a woman's screams coming from the fields on the night of her disappearance, but didn't go out to check because it was pretty common for teenagers to invade his fields, have parties, and just be loud and rowdy. Anita's husband, John Cobby, was able to identify Anita's body by her wedding ring. Her parents then came in, but her father stopped her mother from going in there, as he didn't want her to see Anita in that state. He mentioned that he just couldn't believe that this happened to his daughter, but if it weren't for her, it would have been someone else's daughter. Her estranged husband Cobby was initially suspected of her murder but was later cleared. The Australian public reacted with anger upon hearing details of Anita's murder. On the 6th of February, the NSW state government posted an $50,000 Australian dollars reward for information leading to the capture of Cobby's killers, and on the same day in the morning, radio host John Laws obtained a leaked copy of Cobby's autopsy report, which contained explicit details of her injuries, and read it live on the air, both shocking and galvanizing public sentiment. On the 9th of February, detectives reenacted Anita's movements on the night of her disappearance in the hope of jogging the memories of travelers or others who might have seen her. Constable Debbie Wallace wore similar clothing to Anita and traveled the 9:12 p.m. train to Blacktown. Detectives interviewed the passengers and showed them photos of Anita whilst Wallace walked the length of the train during the journey. Following a tip-off from a police informant regarding the stolen Holden, police started searching for Travers, Michael Murdoch, and brothers Les, Michael, and Gary Murphy after they discovered that some of them had a history of violence and that Travers had a reputation for carrying a knife. On the 21st of February, police arrested Travers and Murdoch at the home of Travers' uncle and Les Murphy at Travers' own house. Murdoch and Murphy were charged with offenses relating to stolen cars and released on police bail. According to the medical examiner's report, Anita's autopsy was extremely explicit. Besides all of the sexual assault, she additionally suffered from multiple scrapes, cuts, and lacerations all over her body and on her breasts. She had 2 black eyes that were swollen, a broken nose, and 2 broken cheekbones. Along with self-defense wounds, she also had a finger that completely sliced open, from the tip of her finger down to her hand, most likely being from defending herself. On that same hand, there were multiple broken fingers, and on her other hand, several of her fingers were completely sliced off. It's believed that this happened due to trying to desperately grab the knife away from her attackers. There were no stab wounds on Anita's body. Lastly, her neck was severely sliced open, nearly decapitating her. Travers, who admitted that he had stolen a car, made conflicting statements about the murder and was detained in police custody. While in custody, he requested that a friend be called so she could bring him cigarettes. The phone number was handed to the investigating police, who contacted the friend, a woman. The woman, Travers' aunt, eventually dubbed Miss X, agreed to help with the investigation, met with an officer, and gave him details of Travers' background. Miss X was subsequently sent back in to talk to John Travers, agreeing to hide a recording microphone device in her bra while she visited him in his cell and was able to obtain his confession, whereby he confessed to killing Anita. Miss X later went to Murdoch's home while wearing the concealed recording device to capture his statements on tape as well, in which he confirmed the case, and eventually, the 5 perpetrators were arrested and charged with the murder. The 5 men charged, who were convicted of the murder, had over 50 prior convictions for offenses including armed robbery, assault, larceny, car theft, burglary, drug use, escaping lawful custody, receiving stolen goods, and sexual assault. John Raymond Travers, considered the ringleader of the gang, was raised in poverty in Blacktown, the oldest of 8 children from unmarried teenage parents. By age 14, he was already an alcoholic and was expelled from high school during year 10 for being continually disruptive to other students. Beyond schooling, Travers held few jobs and relied mostly on unemployment benefits as a source of income. He was eventually committed to Boys Town, a juvenile detention facility, by his mother. His father, with whom he never shared a close relationship, left the household in 1981. Finding it difficult to support the family, Travers relied on crime to provide food, stealing animals such as chickens and ducks from nearby households. The health of Travers' mother eventually deteriorated, and he and his siblings were sent to live with foster families while she was hospitalized. Travers had a history of violent sexual behavior and bestiality. Michael Murdoch was a childhood friend and criminal associate of Travers. He had also spent a great part of his childhood in juvenile prisons, where he experienced sexual assaults. He was known to have written to politicians during this period of imprisonment seeking protection from such assaults. Michael, Gary, and Les Murphy were 3 brothers from a family of 9 children. Michael Murphy, aged 33, was the eldest of the 9 Murphy children. He was sent to live with his grandmother when he was 12 years of age. Gary Murphy, aged 28. A hearing impairment affected Gary's schooling and he left early to seek work. He was noted as being an able and willing worker before the crimes. Gary's strong interest in cars led to him facing several car theft-related charges in the years preceding the murder. Les Murphy, aged 22, was the youngest of the Murphy children and was known as having the worst temperament, had faced children's court on many occasions for several theft-related offenses before being accused of the Anita murder. The trial began in Sydney on the 16th of March, 1987. Before proceedings began, Travers changed his plea to guilty. The trial for the rest of the members lasted 54 days, which relied on the defendants trying to convince the jury that they had very little involvement with the sexual assault, brutal beatings, and her murder. However, the jury wasn't buying it, and all 5 of the men were found guilty of the sexual assault and murder of Anita Cobby. They were each sentenced in the Supreme Court of New South Wales to life imprisonment plus additional time without the possibility of parole. Michael Murphy ended up dying at the age of 66 in 2019 from terminal cancer. All 4 other men are still serving out their sentences in prison. Anita's story has ignited a powerful movement to raise awareness about violence against women, fostering conversations and initiatives aimed at preventing such tragedies from ever happening again. Community support networks have been established to offer assistance to survivors and advocate for change. As we remember Anita, we honor her memory by continuing to work towards a world free from violence and cruelty. Her legacy serves as a rallying cry for change, reminding us all of the urgent need to create a safer society for every individual. In the end, Anita Lorraine Cobby Lynch's legacy will be one of resilience, strength, and a call to action. May her memory inspire us to stand united against violence, advocate for justice, and work toward a future where every person can live in safety and peace.